Good morning. Good morning. Well, I'm glad, yeah, someone said, good morning, Peggy. So I had people tell me this morning they didn't recognize me when I first came in. So at least someone there knows who I am, right? Or knows my name. I shouldn't say who I am. That's a little bit different story there. I can't get these things to stay on the podium exactly. So some people have said, well, this is the first time I've seen you with your hair down or whatever. So let's just get some of this stuff out of the way, right? I just got my hair cut yesterday, and I was telling someone else that this is probably the first and only moment that the ends will be even across the back. Although we'll see how I keep it up. But I had a conversation with Edie earlier about something else that was in relationship where she said, well, for just one moment we are, in the black or whatever. And I said, well, we're never anywhere longer than a moment. So it's okay that my hair is only going to be cut evenly for the moment. We'll just see how it all evolves. In that evolution that Skip was talking about, the involution there was, I guess, my decision that I needed to get it cut. The evolution, we'll see how it goes from here. At any rate, I had told Skip earlier this week when I talked to him, he's always concerned about the title for my talk, and I told him I didn't have a title yet, but I thought I was going to talk about involution, evolution, and revolution. But I kind of moved away from that a little bit as I was actually preparing for the talk. So the title that I actually gave the talk is Intention, Attention, No Tension. You might have picked up a little bit from the reading. I kind of concluded that the involution, evolution thing was a little bit, highbrowed, or the terminology is a little arcane from the Science of Mind text, not to take anything away from the truth of it. So another way of looking at the intention, attention, and no tension. And this is all about still, what I learned was treat and beat your feet. So you're talking about moving your feet. I don't know if I'm retrainable to remember to say move your feet instead of beat your feet. The beat your feet kind of alliterated, so I guess it made it easier. That's not right, alliterated. It had an internal rhyme. I forgot what that's called. The old English teacher in me has lost its understanding of those things. Anyway, it kind of rhymed internally. So another way to look at it is let it in through you, let it in, let it out, which is the movement of your feet, express your feet, express it, embody it, move your feet. And then the third part is let it go. So it's intention is the same as letting it in, attention is the same as letting it out, and no tension is the same as letting it go, right? So these are the things that I wanted to speak to you about in relationship to the idea of prayer or treatment. I know I watched Bonnie's talk, or some of Bonnie's talk, and I know she kind of covered the basis of let's get all the definitions out and let's talk about what these terms really mean in religious science, because they don't mean the same thing that you might think just somebody coming in off the street would apply the meaning and definitions to it. So I don't want to have to repeat or go back through all that, and hopefully when I say treatment or prayer, you know I'm speaking of the Science of Mind treatment, or what we call affirmative prayer in our world. So we have this concept that prayer works, but we don't necessarily always understand how or why, and that's not necessarily ours to understand, but because we have this intelligence and this intellect that Skip was reading to us about, we are sometimes at the effect rather than at the cause. We're living in the effect rather than the cause of things. And I want to choose to be living in cause, and I invite you to be in that same place where that involution and evolution are coming about in the order that we believe they are intended, where the involution of the inside comes before the outside part. The cause comes before the effect. If I'm living in effect, I'm busy being managed by my emotions rather than managing them. I'm busy having a life that is at default rather than at design. So these are some of the ways that I choose to look at it and the terms that I choose to use, and if they work for you, great. But one of the things that I truly believe is that our mentality creates our reality. So when I set an intention and my mentality is in alignment with that, I can bring my mentality into alignment with that, then I know that the direction in which I choose to move my feet, or that I'm guided to move my feet, will probably truly be in alignment with what Spirit's design is for my life rather than my own. So I want you to think about this from the standpoint of how the steps of treatment work, but we're really going to focus more today on the move your feet part, the attention part, and how to get the attention where it needs to be in order to create the gap that is between the cause and the effect, or between the intention and the letting go part, where the effect can then show up, is all this attention and how we put our attention to things. And I don't want you to confuse attention with the idea of how. If you start out with the clarity of mind in your intention, in your treatment, when you actually are creating or declaring the affirmation of your treatment, where you are stating it in the now, that it's powerful, positive, present tense, and personal. That to me are the litmus tests for whether or not you've really got a strong declarative or affirmative part to your spiritual mind treatment. That is stated in the positive, that it's stated in the present tense as though it is already here right now, that it is powerful, that the language behind it evokes emotion and has power to it, and that it is personal, it's just yours, it's just to you, and it's I have, not somebody else. That we're anytime, even if we're treating for someone else, we're still treating for our mind. The practitioner is always treating for his or her own mind to be in alignment with the consciousness of Spirit. So if we have a clarity to involve those four elements, then we know that our what and our why are in appropriate place. The how part is not ours. The how part is up to Spirit. So I don't want you to think that I'm going to talk today about intention being the how to make something happen, or how to create this in our lives, or how to bring this manifestation into form, to move from formless to form. I believe that the attention process, or the evolution process that Skip was reading about this morning in the reading, is much more about creating for ourselves a path that's guided, guarded, and protected through Spirit, but that also is just sufficient enough keeping us busy and distracted and keeping our minds on something else so that we can actually really let go of our attachment to the outcome. There is a benefit to the busyness sometimes, as I see it. So if I'm going to be living at cause, I want to have all of my actions, all of my thoughts, feelings, words, deeds in alignment with this what and why that I decided in my treatment is going to be happening. And I want to tell you a little story about myself, because I hope it will illustrate the points that I'm hoping will come through today. Many years ago, this was in the early 90s, when I was first becoming aware or educated into the concepts and the principles of science of mind. We'd been in the real estate business that I'm a part of. We'd had a recession in the late 80s. And I was also, not operating through the principles of prosperity. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I got myself into a bit of trouble with this entity that's known as the IRS. Because I hadn't had the money to pay my taxes. Because I wasn't earning it. I had been working for a single builder. The whole construction business had gone south. And I'd gone back to general brokerage, and there wasn't much of that. It was not unlike the way it's been like 5 years ago or 4 or 5 years ago here. And so the IRS was knocking on my door pretty hard. And they wanted to take my house. They wanted me to sell my house, or they wanted to take my house, or they wanted to, because that was the only asset I had that had any equity that could have ostensibly been the purposeful way to pay them. And I still have this problem today where I don't always remember that God is available for the 411 as well as the 911. I'm still kind of always in this mode where I have to fix it, I have to do it, I have to figure it out, it's about me, I've got to do this. And I forget that I can just let go and turn it over to Spirit. And I knew even less about that back then. And I had not understood this idea of treatment. I hadn't taken any classes. I didn't really quite know. I loved coming to this center, and I loved Reverend Candy, and I loved the Spirit, and I knew that the principles were in alignment with what I really believed, and it was so good to get away from this, excuse me, no bashing here necessarily, but the idea that I'd previously had of organized religion. But I didn't understand all the principles. I was just baby stepping around it, trying to learn from Sunday mornings because I didn't have time to take any of the classes because they conflicted. They were on Tuesday, they were on Monday nights, and they were always in conflict with this other group that I had that met on Monday nights. But I decided I was out of solutions. I had no idea what I was going to do to fix this thing with the IRS. So there I was. It was like, well, I got no more information that's coming through me that's going to help fix this problem. Maybe I'll try this thing out at the center, at the church, and I'll put the thing in the prayer box. So that's what I did, and I kind of had to work myself around to do that because I don't know if any of the rest of you in here have the same kind of problems, but asking for help has never been my forte, And putting something out there that was sort of shameful, I thought, or putting that out to other people in the public venue, even if it was going to only be about 7 or 8 or 10 practitioners that were going to see it, it was still some sort of unburdening or confessing of my sins that I thought I was doing. But I knew enough to know that I should ask for this or something better, or that I should ask for the opportunity to have the problem solved the way I thought it wanted to be solved, or I should be willing to accept whatever solution arose. So that's how I did put it into my prayer request. And that afternoon, I had an open house to go to. And as I mentioned, the market was pretty dull at that point in time. So nobody came. I mean, there was like hardly, I think maybe one couple came. So I had 4 hours to just sit around and think about things. And that's sometimes a dangerous place to be. In my mind, I don't know for you guys, but the 6 inches between my ears can sometimes be the, it's a tough demilitarized zone sometimes. But I had this sort of peace come over me because all of a sudden I gave myself some space, or the universe did, and I was quiet and still. There was, it was a vacant, a new construction home, nothing else there, no furniture, no nothing, no TV, no nothing. And all of a sudden I just felt this peace come over me about having released this idea of what to do about the IRS to the practitioners and to the process of the spiritual mind treatment that was going to go on here. And it just felt so comforting, I guess is the best word I can think of. I just felt so comforted by it. Excuse me. And I sat there a little while longer. Can you hand me my water bottle, please, Bonnie? Excuse me, forgot to get any water in here. And after that peace and that comfort seemed to permeate my beingness, I thought, this is really interesting. And then the longer I sat there, all of a sudden ideas started to come through me. I knew enough even then to know they weren't mine. That it wasn't coming to me through my own brain and my own mind, because I would have consistently resisted anything like that if it came up. And so the one that came to me that I really thought might have the most promise was for me just to go, I'd already humbled myself by turning this into the prayer box. So it seemed like, well, maybe I could go the next step and confess to my banker that I had this problem. And see if I had, my credit was low, all sorts of things had gone, the train was off the rails in so many ways that I knew I couldn't borrow any money, or that my credit was lousy. There was all sorts of problems financially at that point. And I don't know if I'm the only person, but I imagine that a few of you in the room came in through the doors here initially because you had some kind of issue or some kind of problem. Basically we know now, or I know better now, that I don't have any problems. The problems are the ones I create because of my unwillingness to accept life on life's terms and go through the events of life with my better judgment rather than my lesser judgment. But I did. I took action the next day. I moved my feet because I knew this was a possible answer because it hadn't come from me. It had come from somewhere. And this was back in the days when the prayer group used to meet in the afternoon after church. So I really thought, man, they're praying and I'm getting it. It's coming through. So I went to see my banker on Monday. And he said, you know, Peggy, I think I will make you the loan, not because you're qualified to get the loan, because I just know you won't stiff me. Those were his words. Those were his words. And I thought, oh my God, you know, on the basis of my own personal character or whatever, he's willing to loan me, I don't think it was $65,000, something like that at the time. And that took care of my problem with the IRS. I didn't have to sell my house, or, you know, and my daughter was pretty upset at the time because I had told her we were probably going to have to sell the house and move. She was 13 or 14, something like that at the time, you know, just in the midst of all the things you do at school and the activities and the friends and the kids and having to move to a different district or whatever. So that's a story that I thought I could share with you today that would be something that maybe some folks could relate to, and you could see how the steps of putting in the intention that I really needed to be clear about letting go of my attachment to the outcome and allowing that clarity to be put forth to the practitioners to say, you know, pray for me to have this fixed or to accept whatever evolves. Because I was so attached, I was holding on so tightly to the idea of how it needed to work and what was I going to do about it, that I knew I had to let go. So I think I had the right intention at that time. And then the attention I was paying that afternoon by just being still and being quiet and being somewhat meditative seemed to have the benefit of allowing Spirit to come through me and to me with some possible solutions that I then aligned that attention with action, the right action that I took the next day. And just, I mean, I was fortunate that the outcome was the way it was, but because I had released it already, I had released the problem, and I had released the solution, and I had released whatever was going to be my ill fate potentially with the banker. I had released all of that because I basically just surrendered it to Spirit. I let go and let God. So first I let it in, and then I let it out by expressing it, by embodying it, and then I let go and released it to God. And you know, I think Ernest Holmes tells us that every prayer is its own answer. And I think that was really my first and probably longest and strongest example that I've held on to in my work in religious science, to the reality that the praying actually does have within it the solution or the answer. The problem and the solution are one and the same. So if I align my words and my thoughts and my feelings and my actions with that intention, and then release the outcome, then my moving my feet is just part of going through the motions of the process. So I have a few things that I wanted to share with you today from some of the works. You know, Ernest Holmes talks about, and we use this analogy in our classes quite a bit, the idea that prayer and the outcome from prayer is analogous to planting a garden. And that when we have that intention, we're planting the seed. And the way we get the clarity about the seed is to know if I want a tomato plant at the end of the line, I'm going to plant a tomato seed. If I want a watermelon, I'm going to plant a watermelon seed. But I'm not going to plant a watermelon seed and expect I'm going to get tomato. So the idea is to clarify in your mind what is the right seed to be planted in the soil of the greater consciousness, the greater mind, the middle part of the V up there. And then we have this other aspect that is the attention to the garden. We have to be willing to pull up the weeds, to get rid of the bad habits, to move our feet in the directions that we're guided by Spirit that are appropriate for us. And a lot of times that means we've got to get rid of stuff. So that the only thing that's left is what's really directly in front of you that is in alignment with the seed. Got to get the weeds out from around the tomato plant, got to add the amendment to the soil, got to fertilize it, got to do whatever the experts might advise. In this case, that's the equivalent of spiritual guidance. But if I don't do the work, if I don't get out and move my feet, the garden's just going to be a loss. Or, alternatively, if I don't release it to nature, if I don't release my effort and the seed itself, knowing and having the faith that within that seed, that tomato is there. It's just waiting for the right conditions to bring it forth into an actual plant that bears fruit. But if I don't have the patience or the trust or the faith, I think we can understand a little kid. We probably all did this. I know I did. I'm older than a lot of people in the room, but I think they still do it in school, where the kids plant seeds or they plant beans or things in the classroom. Some of you that are teachers might be able to tell me that. And I think it's only understandable that the child doesn't have the understanding of the greater global expectation there and wants to see that seed come up. And wants to, every day they're checking the plant. Is anything going on? Is anything going on? And I can understand the child that might go and dig it up just to see what's happening. Hopefully we know better, but we don't know better because we still think we are not getting the result we wanted, our prayer is not bringing us what we wanted, or we have a different idea about it because we're not paying close enough attention. Sometimes it's not going to show up the way I might have outlined or the way I might have thought it should have. But again, as I said, the attention part is mostly a distraction to keep you busy, to keep you from digging up the plant, to keep you from worrying over something that you needed to be letting go to the trust and faith of God and Spirit to do its work. And that releasing is the thing that I shouldn't say we, because I will own this, that I'm most resistant to doing. To surrendering it, to letting it go, to releasing it, to letting it be what it what it will be. And so Ernest talks in this little book. I brought this here before. It's called The Basic Ideas of Science of Mind. As I said, it may not look like this in the bookstore anymore because my books are all kind of old. Not only because I'm old and I've been doing this for a while, but because I'm cheap and I always bought them used to begin with. So they were old before they were new to me, put it that way. So this idea of the garden he has in here on page 51, the multiple steps that he thinks you need to take. That to use this, it's of them the good, reliable, dependable soil. He's growing a radish, so he's going to grow a radish seed. But he says, but exactly from the same soil in the next row, you can grow carrots or you could grow something else, and all other kinds of seeds that bring forth according to their own nature. And this is the point, they come out according to their own nature. And you knew they would. You had the faith and the trust in that. We had the faith and the trust that the thing on the seed packet, that picture, that's what it's going to maybe look like, but that's certainly going to be the plant that's in the seed packet. We have that kind of faith in that. So I've said before, we have more faith in the pizza delivery guy than we do in God sometimes. We are not liking to have to trust the invisible to bring forth into the visible. So he says, your part is fourfold in the tending of this garden. Get the soil ready, choose the right seeds, plant them, give the garden the care and attention that it requires, and allow the marvelously wise soil and Mother Nature to take charge of the process of production. So that's intention, attention, and no tension. Let it go. Let it go. The right action part, Ernest talks about several places and throughout his works. And I actually got this book out of a dumpster in California once, and it's great. It's called Good for Me, and it's a compilation that was put together for some class that was out there years ago by some folks at home office. And he says, take action. And he's talking about moving from prayer to performance. That you have the intention, and then how do you shift your attention to doing something, to getting that right action. So he says you can't, the belief in the advisability of praying, of only praying and meditating is a mistaken idea and arises from one's attempt to separate oneself from the world in which one lives. Getting to the mountaintop or sitting on the cushion all the time. He says, meditation should stimulate the intellect to renewed and greater objective action. Thus, we should swing from prayer to performance, from meditation into action, from contemplation to accomplishment, until the time comes till the time comes when all that activity, when the thought has gradually led us to the place where we have a continuous sense of the overshadowing presence and an indwelling good that is forever springing spontaneously into our experience. In other words, we have to do that activity until we reach the place where we have released it all, where we have let go, where we have this ongoing, overshadowing presence of spirit that is in, around, through, and for us, as Ernest says. So don't dig it up. And the other part about the action that I think is important, it always has been for me at any rate, and I just, don't think I'm that unique. When I talk about pulling up the weeds, what I understand about my life is that the limitations of my life, and this is maybe for your weight loss class in a sense too, is that the limitations in my life are directly proportional to the size of my butt. Okay? And it's B-U-T. But I can't, but I don't, but I'm not able, but I'm not ready, but I'm not worthy, but I don't deserve. The but limitations are the things that will pull our attention away from, take, as what Martin Luther King would say, your eye off the prize. You've set that up in your intention. What is the prize? And if you keep your focus and your attention on the prize and you're moving your feet in that direction, you might get there. But that but just pulls you right off course so many times. So we typically have, I think, three main buts. One is, but what if? Well, what if? What if? What if this happened instead of that? What if I get this instead of that? What if I get tomatoes instead of watermelon? And one of them is, but I don't have. Like, I don't have the capacity, I'm not capable, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough time. You fill in the blank. I'm sure there's other things that you all can think of that you have thought of in the past. And then the third one is, but I am not. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not capable, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve it. They kind of fall into those three categories. So if you know about that, then you can kind of watch yourself. Pay attention to what shows up along the path from your intention to the releasing and letting go and allowing and accepting into your life whatever it is that you're praying about. That's the other piece of it too, Letting go is one thing, and accepting and being willing to accept it to show up for you and accept how it shows up for you is another huge issue. So those three arenas in which you can have the but. So what is the best thing? The one thing about living in that limitation of our butts is that it's easy to do. You can be the couch potato in your own life, just sit on your butt all day. And think about all the problems and all the issues and all the limitations and all the reasons why God won't give you this, or you can't do what's necessary for you to manifest it. Whatever your intention was, your attention is pulled away from the prize, and you're thinking, well, I'm just going to lay on my butt because I'm sort of, I didn't really want that anyway. I didn't really want to lose that 20 pounds anyway, I didn't really, it's okay. That's not the kind of acceptance I'm really talking about here. That's the couch potato acceptance, and I'm just going to lay on my butt all day. It's easier. And I'll be managed by my emotions instead of managing my emotions. I'll be living a life of default rather than a life of design. I'll be at effect rather than at cause. But I didn't really care that much about it anyway. So how do we get up off our butt? We got to get up, right? So I'm proposing to you that you get up off of those butts when you have them, when you see them show up, when they get your attention. And your awareness is high enough to recognize, uh-oh, butt alert, Then you're willing to think about it in a different way, and maybe you're willing to get up off your butt and take a stand. You've got to stand up to get up off your butt. I mean, that's the physiological thing. To get up off our butt, we have to stand up. Maybe you could roll over to get up, but I mean, mostly we've got to stand up. So I say stand up and take a stand. Take a stand for yourself. Take a stand for what it is that you prayed about, that what it is that you wanted, what you set your intention to be. Take a stand. And take a stand for rather than against something. Ernest teaches us to take a stand for something, to be for something and against nothing. So again, it's back into that positive, personal, present tense, powerful aspect of things. So get off your butt, stand up, and take a stand. And recognize that what happens in your life is you. It's your experience. It's your mentality that created your reality. And recognize that there are possibilities to changing your mentality. But that the most important thing I think any of us can learn is something that's being talked about in this book that was gifted to me last week by not actually a client. This woman says, I know it's probably pretty out of the ordinary to give something to the other side's broker, but she said, I have so appreciated you and everything that you have done, and I'm so grateful for the process of this transaction, that she said, I've been reading this book and it's been changing my life and I want to give it to you. So she gave me this book. It's called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. I hadn't been familiar with it or heard about it. It's called The Journey Beyond Yourself. And apparently it was an Oprah thing, and it's got an entry by Deepak Chopra and was a New York Best Times seller and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things he talks here about here that I think is so important is for us to recognize that our life is the spiritual path. And as I've said here before, whatever is in my way is on my way. I need to recognize that something that I believe to be an obstacle, a problem, an issue, or a challenge, or whatever word we want to put on it, is there for a reason. It's there for a lesson, an opportunity, what I call the bless in the mess, and what I can get the lesson from. So he talks about this importance of letting go around the experiences that come into your life, and this is what I want to bring to your attention here at the closing, this last part about the no tension. The no tension, the relaxation into spirit, that same comfort that I felt that afternoon in the story that I told you about my own experience with treatment. He says that the way to work with resistance is by relaxing. The act of relaxing through your personal resistance not only changes your relationship, it changes your relationship with everything. Your soul has now learned how to let disturbing energies pass through. The process of relaxing through resistance is beneficial to everything in your life, and this is because it directly addresses how to keep your heart open when it was so trying to close. Deep inner release is a spiritual path in and of itself, and in this path of non-resistance, the path of acceptance, the path of surrender, it's about not resisting these energies as they pass through you. If you have difficulty doing this, don't get down on yourself. Just keep working with it. It is the work of a lifetime, after all, to become that open, that complete, that whole. And he goes on to talk about what I call the difference between milestones and millstones, is that when we can reach that aha moment about the thing that we thought was burdening us, the millstone that's hanging around your neck, from the old type of punishment in the old years. That millstone around your neck becomes the milestone in your life. And that path of your life that you're living, hopefully at the highest intention, with the greatest spiritual attention, and the greatest release or surrender to spirit on the other side, is where you have let go and let God, and I just let it be and grow with the flow, and invite you to do the same. Namaste.